Hello, welcome to Nezo's Bad Shop. I am your host, Nezo, and you are looking at the Yokomo SD 1.0. This is a Constructor's Digest video. This is going to show you how I assembled the car, little tips and tricks along the way, and building info for you so that you can have a nice, good build process. Not so much speedy, but more we can get the quality of build up and you can be drifting in no time. This is, yes, for the Yokomo SD 1.0. This is part of Yokomo's new era out of 2022 for their new lineup of drift car. So far, we've had the MD 1.0 release, the Master Drift. This one is the SD 1.0, the Super Drift as it's called, Super Drift. And along the way soon will be the RD 1.0, the Rookie Drift, as it's called. So here we have the mid-range car. This price is in Canadian dollars, just FYI. So being a Constructor's Digest, I'm going to go through the manual and talk about the parts and the assembly process and stuff like that. And, well, I'm going to go through a couple things really quickly. The first is you will have leftover parts. Here's some of them. Okay. Second is they took all the screws per each step and put them into a cute little screw bag with its own little guide here, which is extra work because you have to dig through all these little bags to figure out how many screws you need per each step, which is a little annoying. But anyways, I've simplified the process by doing this. Take one of these, okay, one of these sorter box things. Take your screw bag and each individual screw bag, 1, 2, 3, and so on, put them in here, and then when you're asked for, you know, like 3 of screw number 4, you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and away you go. Sort screws out makes life a lot easier and speeds up the process, crucially, because otherwise, yeah, you spend a good amount of time looking for screws and trying to figure out what screws what and this, that, and the other. The other major concern for this new era of drift car from Yokomo is the out-of-box setting in the front, this front geometry. I don't know what they were thinking or who was thinking what, but if you set any kind of ride height in the front end on the shocks for the chassis, any kind of ride height, so you got a bit of ride height here, the front end does this. What the hell is going on there? That is a whole hell of a lot of bump steer. Droop aside, droop is normal, but that should not be doing that. What's worse is when we give it a little bit of steering angle. Are you ready for this? Oh my god, what the heck is oh no, 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 no. So whoever approved this at Yokomo as an out-of-box setting, just know this is not it. If anyone from Yokomo on the current design team is watching, what happened here? Because you pretty much have to run it pancaked, and I mean with like 0 ride height, okay, like next to no ride height, for the steering geometry to actually like give us any kind of Ackerman on a lead wheel. Because with ride height, the chase wheel wants to do everything, and that's just, yeah. So anyways, you're gonna want to do a little bit of a bench tune on this before you take it on track, or run it with absolutely no ride height, which kind of defeats the purpose of having beautiful big bore oil filled with soft option spring shocks. Okay, so that just, yeah, I'm definitely going to be tuning out of that because I kind of like this car. I liked the way it drove when it was when I did pancake the suspension out, although it wasn't like I couldn't really attack or anything. I could just barely drive it, but the suspension did feel good. So this will get tuned, and then we will correct this crap because just what the hell. But yeah, if anyone from Yokomo is watching, fix this out of box, because just what the absolute frig. Just no, okay? No. Anyways, so aside from that, the chassis is aluminum. Check that out, and it's got a nice polished finish. So that's a nice touch. So yeah, I do like it. I just don't like this out-of-box crap in the front, that setting. But the new slide rack here, they do give you that lightweight one-piece boy, so that's really nice. So I'm gonna work with that. That's new, and figure that out. Yeah, so aside from that, let's dive into the manual, okay? And also, yeah, the settings and the geometry here that I'm going to go through in this manual, I checked, triple checked, to make sure that I didn't screw something up, and that's why that's happening. That's how it is. Okay, and I had a similar experience with the YD2 ZS kit, the all plastic ZS with the 4-gear transmission. Similar experience, but not as visually bad, and holy. Anyways, SD 1.0. So when you open the manual, here's what you'll probably find is a beautiful little coupon for Tsukuba Drift Arena, and these are getting this is a thicker one. So that one's kind of cute. I put a little bend on it, but it looks really nice. So coupon for Tsukuba Drift Arena if you ever make it out there to Japan. I got like 4 or 5 of these things now, so we going to Japan soon. That's for sure. So we'll put that over there. And crucially, Yokomo, someone in their sticker department, fired up the old computer and punched some different letters into the sticker sheet. So SD 1.0, nice. Drift performance, nice. And SD on the bumper. So I will put some SD 1.0 stickers somewhere on this chassis to identify it, so people in the pits can easily see it, and maybe on the bumper of the body that lives on this. So there's that. That's nice. Yay! Cool, right? It's about time. So at least for the new era, they got their sticker sheets right, and I hope they don't screw that up again, because that was just embarrassing. Now, moving on, let's begin. Move the car out of the way. So, step 1. Make sure you got your parts ready. Main chassis assembly. There's the chassis. Okay, note the right way. All the countersunk holes will be on the bottom. Mount your suspension mounts there. Note the holes. Okay, note the holes position. And here's what I was talking about. Please choose from this from the screw bags as needed. So you need 4 of those and 4 of those. So instead of digging through the bag all at once, use your little thing. You need such and such, and then da 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 da. Bang bang bang, and away you go. You pick them up really easy. So that's how I got around that problem. Once you install the suspension mounts, move on to the body post, and I used my hobby knife to put between the slot of the body post or a battery post when I was screwing it in, just to hold it in position. That's that. Now, when you come to this part, this is the new slide rack. So I went slow here just to make sure I got this all correct. Pay attention to the bearings and the cam positions, okay? It's a little bit different than the YD2. Just the out-of-box default setting for the slide rack. But pay attention to the cam settings, lube the bearings up, take your time, okay? Put Loctite on those screws going into those cams, because you do not want those going loose or unadjusting themselves. You'll have not a good time. You'll have to retighten it. After that, complete the slide rack assembly. Okay, pretty straightforward. Use Loctite because we're going into metal, aluminum. Okay, Loctite those, and Loctite that nut onto there. Then you build some turnbuckles, 43.2 millimeter, 30.3 millimeters is for the slide rack and for the steering tie rod, basically the turnbuckle. I measured this 3 times. That turnbuckle that defines that toe. Good. Anyways, once you've done that, put that aside. The gear diff assembly. Now this is the same friendly diff that we've had in the YD2s since 2016. So they've kept it because it works good. So take your 4 screws because it comes pre-assembled. 4 screws out. Fill it up just above the gears. Just below the gear, sorry, top of the gear. Make sure the gasket's there and put it back together. Start pattern 1, 2, 3, 4. There you go. If you want to maintenance it or put some black grease in there, they actually don't show where the black grease goes, but you put black grease on the out drive and put some black grease on the inside, and that's about that. And when you're doing this, make sure you use number 10,000 oils for the diff, okay? After that, put the diff aside because you're going to be doing gearbox. Now here's the really cool part about the SD, okay? They give you 2 gearboxes. You have choice between 3 gear or the 4 gear S version. The 3 gear is the Z style, 4 gear is the S style. So here I went with the 3 gear Z style. This right here is the 4 gear. 1, 2, 3, and then 4 is the diff. So there's the 4 gear transmission housing. I didn't use it, so that's still brand new. Okay, we'll put that over there. So this is how to do the 4-gear one, okay? Just pay attention to the bearings and the positions and oil the bearings up and all that good stuff. Run the gears dry because you don't need to put any oil on them. I've never put any oils or any kind of anti-wear on my transmission gears in any of my YD2s. And my idler gears, first time I blew a set, they was like 2 or 3 years on before I blew them up. So unless you run an open transmission, you can blow them up a little faster, but get a bit dirtier. But otherwise, no, it should be fine. Pay attention to the screws and then the motor mount position, because this is an S motor mount, and they give you both motor mounts for the S and for the Z. So there's the Z one, and there's my S one right there, still in the bag. There's an extra gear because I only use 3, and there's some extra parts in there as well, bearings and pinion gear, which I borrowed a pinion from another car, but it's the same size. Anyways, those are some of the extra parts. So if you do, yeah, there's the S transmission, like I said. So finish it off with the motor plate, sorry, and then do your spur gear assembly. Snug those screws up. Use Loctite into them. Don't over tighten them. And when you put this on here, I forgot to make notes in this manual. When you put the spur gear assembly on, don't forget the set screw for here, okay? Otherwise, it'll come off and you'll have a bad time and your friends will all make fun of you. And you don't want that at the track. I mean, they'll probably make fun of you, and then at least, you know, hopefully someone comes over and says, hey, I got some Loctite for you, bud. And then you won't have that happen again. And after you finish that, if you do the 4-gear, bolt it onto the transmission as so, okay? Six screws. And then, after it's on the transmission, or after it's on the chassis, sorry, install your motor if you have it. It's okay if you don't. The nice part is they do include the pinion gear, 24 tooth, okay, same right there. I borrowed one for another car, that's why there's 2, one in the bag and one on the car. So that's that. Yeah, so that's complete the 4-gear transmission. If you want to do the 3-gear, they provide the instruction as well. The cool part about the 3-gear is it's the Z-based one from the YD2Z, so it has quick release rear diff. So you have the cover there. Okay, straightforward. Follow the instruction. Bearings, idler shaft, put some oil in the bearings, etc. Put the screws in as so. Okay, straightforward. Take your time. But this is the cool one, the Z, the quick release, and this is the one I did. So there's that cover right there. 4 screws, and that cover comes off. I can change and put me a CLSD in there, eh? I could just you know, just CLSD real quick. But if you do the 4-gear transmission, you don't get that option. Look, see, that's sealed. That's all sealed. There's no opening there, so out the back of the casing. So just FYI. So I did that so I'd have quick release. So once you finish the transmission, the 3-gear goes a little quicker than the 4-gear. You then have choice of how you want to do the rear brace for the transmission. This is for the 3-gear, okay? You can put the rear brace low mount, so it mounts down here. You can put it high like I did, or put it high like I did, sorry, up here, just underneath the motor. So if you put it low, you'll be putting the motor plate low, more than likely. If you put the rear brace high, you'll be putting the motor mount high, okay? And you will follow the holes here as per the mounting procedure, whichever one you want to do. But that is also an option, okay? Once you figure out where you want the brace, spur gear assembly, just like on the other transmission, is similar, same sort of thing. Don't forget the set screw when you install it onto the transmission, okay? Depending on low mount or high mount for the rear brace is where you install the screws, okay? Now, if you want to do, here's another option. So this is with the battery in the main position here, see? In the middle of the chassis. If you want to do 3-gear transmission and do and when you go to install the rear brace, if you put the battery in the rearward position, i.e. move the battery post all the way back, you can then use this piece, the upper deck adapter, which is this piece right here. This piece, you use that and it deletes this brace, deletes that brace and out the right there, and gives you more flex, but also allows you to put a battery right underneath the motor. Okay, so that's another option. So there's quite a few different configs on this car that you can do. So I kind of like that, that you have all that choice for the transmission and battery mounting. And you do get a pinion, as I said. Put Loctite on that set screw. Install your motor on the 3 gear if you have it ready. You don't have to right away. Mine's installed there. This is, oh, I forgot to feature the electronic set real quick. That's an old OMG Strike 8.5 motor attached to a classic Speed Passion Reventon R ESC. See it? R. R. And we got a Sound 1472 receiver with an OMG V3 orange / Goldie gyro attached to an OMG Predator Bad Shop Servo. Yes, just wanted to feature that real quick. So anyways, you don't have to put the electronic set in when you're building the car. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just build it, roller, show it off, and then I install electronic set. Anyways, moving on. Once you get to servo installation here, okay, this is where you'll start building up the front end. And the previous gen, the YD2, you would usually build up the front bulkhead assembly first and then do the servo. This is the other way around. So you'll start by assembling the servo if you have it ready. And for this, I kind of suggest you, because you got to put it in upside down and all that crazy stuff. And if you have it, power it up, neutralize the settings and the trims and all that. Install your servo as straight as possible, and then trim it as you see fit. But you'll start by installing the bulkhead rear brace onto the servo, and then installing the servo mount onto the chassis. Okay, then you'll marry that servo rear bulkhead front, the servo and bulkhead rear of the front bulkhead to the chassis. See how this back side of the servo is going to the servo mount, and this part where the servo horn and turnbuckle is. Oh yes, you'll have to make a turnbuckle. Oh, the turnbuckle you've already made previously. That's right. It's a couple steps back. That was just off to the side. Okay. Install that in those holes. Then, what you'll do, you don't have to connect this right away. I didn't, but you can if you want. Connect that bulk up to the slide rack. Install your turnbuckles onto the slide rack that you did previously. Bolt the front bulkhead on, and then bolt the slide rack onto the front bulkhead. And don't forget those spacers, because that's what spaces that new rack correctly. Okay, I'm wondering if that'll be, we can tune that and move the rack around, move the rack up or down. I'm going to try stuff like that. And just 2mm spacer are included in bag number 2, just FYI, for that. Okay. And then after that, you'll bolt, you will connect the servo mounting here, the rear of the bulkhead, to the front of the bulkhead via this upper arm mount. That's the back side of that. Okay. After that, put that aside. You're going to do the shock towers, and it's nice because they give you aluminum shock towers in this car. Okay, so aluminum shock towers. These are the big bore ball mounts, so they're the big, I think these are like 5.8 mil. It says S8, I forget the size of it. It's beefy. Okay, you'll put that on. Use some Loctite so they don't unscrew themselves. Note the hole position for out of box setting. And the rear shock tower, same thing. Use Loctite on that. The ball stud long, and the positions of the shock mounting and the upper turnbuckle link. Okay, note that, and the 3mm aluminum spacer there, and the position of the ball cups when you snap it onto the ball. Pay attention. And so these turnbuckles here that I was just pointing at, these are them here. And if you, so this is important, if you do the 4-gear transmission, 55mm length for the rear turnbuckle length. Okay, if you did 3-gear, do 55.8. okay, so that will define the rear camber setting depending on the transmission you used. Okay, and then once you've done that assembly, bolt the rear shock tower to the rear of the transmission, whether you've done the 3-gear or the 4-gear. Okay, then front upper arm installation, the overall length is 58.5. all right, and note the position of the ball cup. That's it standing up normally. And once you've done that, you will utilize that hole to install the upper arm pins and install the arms onto the pins and install your front shock tower, and away you go. And then don't forget to use Loctite on that screw a tiny bit, just so that stays in, the pin doesn't come out. Then you move on to the lower suspension arms. Note the 2mm spacer here. Okay, overall length 65mm, and again I triple check this lower arm length here. Lower arm length, I triple checked that just to make sure, and it's the front end setting we ended up with. Wild and untamable. But yeah, so once you've done that, you've got your lower arm assemblies. Install it onto the car. Note the spacers, okay? And these are the plastic suspension mounts, so you don't have to use Loctite. Bolt goes on. 2 screws there to go underneath. Once you've done that, steering block installation, which is the front knuckles basically. Note the position and start your assembly. Note here, because this comes with the Yokomo optional axle set, which is really nice. So note the amount of spacers after the bearing and on the back side, okay? And the position of where the ball studs go. And then install it into the car and make sure you get the ball cups orientated correctly. Alright? And once you've done that, move on to the rear hub carrier, aka the rear knuckle. Drive shafts will be pre-assembled, but if you want to do maintenance or do the black grease thing, there's that. And note the position of the rear knuckles. Now these are the aluminum ones, okay? Use the aluminum because they give you aluminum rear knuckles. You can see the, oops, you can see them in there. See that? There it is. Very nice. It's a nice touch. But it is the version, it's the older version, aluminum knuckle from the YD2 gen. But it is nice, it looks good. And make that assembly, oil the bearings, add the Loctite to the ball stud, and then build your rear arms. Okay, and use that ball stud with the spacer pre-installed on it. It's molded to it, one piece. And then take your rear arm assemblies, bolt it into the rear of the car, note the spacers, okay? Install it and away you go. Install the upper turnbuckle onto the rear knuckle, note the position. Once you do that, you will come to the shocks, okay? Now these are the aluminum big bores. They're really nice, and these are the latest versions of them. And the tolerances are very good. And take your time, okay? E-clip onto the shock shaft. I use a cutting board. Put the shaft downward, put the E-clip underneath it and clip it in. Put the piston on, and then use a small pair of pliers to pinch the E-clip on the top part there. It may take a few tries. I have to do a how-to video of that so people can see how I do it. Once you do that, here's a tip. That preload collar, you're going to put an O-ring inside of there, okay? It's a big one. Stick it inside there and then put a little bit of shock oil. I think this is 200, 300 is what this thing, this car asks for. Yeah, 200, 300. Put a little bit of shock oil. Just dab it on the O-ring there. Makes your life a lot easier when you screw this onto the shock body, okay? Then take your shock shaft and piston assembly, drop it down through the body of the shock, put some oil on the O-ring here because you're going to put an O-ring, and slide it over the shaft, and then install it into the body when it's already on the shaft. Doing that first instead of putting the ring in the body and shoving the shaft through it will prevent you from cutting up the O-ring and making it leak. So do it the way I just described it. Put the shaft in first, then lube the O-ring up, put the O-ring on the shaft and slide it up into the body. Screw it tight. Put the ball stud on, or ball cup on. If you have a pair of shock shaft pliers, see where those numbers are, that's where the shock shaft goes to hold the shock shaft while you put the ball cup on, that's the best. Or you can use Kleenex and pliers and put the Kleenex between the pliers and grip that up, hold the shaft, or side cutters, the top of the thread of the shock shaft, pinch it, put the ball cup on. A couple ways to do it. Piston all the way down at the bottom dead center as we call it, fill it full of oil, slowly up and down a couple times, bleed the air out of it, let it sit 5 to 10 minutes or so. And then what I like to do for this part is take the cap and the top hat, put the top hat in the cap, take the bladder here, the diaphragm, put that into the top cap assembly underneath the top hat, a little bit of oil so it all holds together, and then quickly flip it over and screw it onto the top of the shock. And this being the latest version of these big bores,
first try. Every single one I screwed in, it bled out the perfect amount of oil, and the shock felt amazing. So perfect. I didn't have to redo the cap and bleed out more air or whatever. All I had to do then was put the right springs for front and rear, put the right bottom spring cups, and my shocks were built. Away you go. So once you're done that, install the shocks onto the front and rear of the car. They snap fit, top and bottom. The top's the big side, the bottom is the small side. Once you're done that, you're pretty close to being finished. You do the front bumper and body posts, which is this, and then you move on to the foam bumper. Here, foam bumper, top of the front bumper there. There we go. Install the rear body post. Note the position. See how that looks? See how that looks there? Note the position. And then the only other thing you want to do, says here, if you did the 3-gearbox, open the mounting hole in the rear of the body, 4.5 millimeter behind the marking position. Okay, sure. Depending on the body you use, I guess. After that, you can use these little body mount things, which I don't really use. I just use straight pins. I'm old school. After that, choice of rear diffuser. Big old Batman diffuser. Good for protecting your investment on the rear end, and a little bit of rear weight. I personally like the shorty rear diffuser for out-of-box testing, so there it is, shorty rear diffuser. Install that, away you go. Then you place your electronics, whether you're ready or not. If you have them, go ahead. And there'll be wires and everything floating around. Now, this is where things get interesting, just at the very finish. Depending on the version of transmission you picked will dictate sort of how you do the upper deck, okay? So if you do 4-gear standard, just the S transmission, you use the upper deck adapter R, that one, this piece right there, and you'll use that, and you go across the top of the into the top deck and install it, and away you go. 2 screws and the pin, okay, and your battery goes in the middle, okay. If you did the 3-gear transmission, you'll have this brace, either low mount or high mount, okay? So this is showing low mount, and you just install the top deck right onto that. If you did the high brace, there's the high brace, battery position rearward, because now we got high brace action, okay? Oh, sorry, no, we don't do the we don't do high brace at all. If we're doing it, oh sorry, high brace, oh my goodness, I forgot. High brace is the same as the low brace. It's either going to be, the brace will be low or high, but it'll still mount to that part. If you do the, if you want to do battery position rearward, then use that piece I showed earlier. Yeah. When you want a piece to go separate, and it won't. Come on, man. Here we go, that piece. Use that piece, separate, and install it onto the upper deck and part of the transmission, and away you go. And then you put your battery rearward. You can also do, if you did 3-gear transmission, put the battery in the middle, inline, and you'll use the battery, the rear brace upward, because then the motor will be up as well, see? So you can put the battery in line as well. So there's a bunch of config for this car. Once you've done playing around with that and you decide which way you've gonna do the upper deck, you're pretty much done. Install the wheels that don't come with the kit, so make sure you have a set good to go. I think these are RC Art Worldly Pros rims, wheels, with somewhat used Yatabi Edition Yokomo C tires. So that's what I ended up doing for my shakedown video. And at that point, we're done. Car's built, and you're ready to either finish electronics or go for a drive. And you get a setting sheet here, SD 1.0 setting sheet, although it looks a lot like a Wardy 2 sheet. But yeah, that's for you to fill out of box setting or whatever. Explodey view, so you can see all the part numbers, etc., how everything goes together. Glorified part list, notes area, and we're done. So that's that. Yokomo SD 1.0. This, as what I call it, actually, instead of the super drift, I call it the stance drift, because you gotta have stance for it to, well, to work. But we're going to tune out of that and all that kind of stuff. So you will see a lot more videos of this on track, tuned, and comparison. And yeah, we'll compare it to the Rookie Drift when I get my hands on that. And aside from that, yes, let me know what you think if you got one. Like, comment, subscribe. What'd you do for the tuning? Are you going to tune out of it? Or did you experience this? Or was it worse? Was it better? I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to hear, actually. I'm very curious, but I have a feeling we're all going to be in the same boat. People who did the out-of-box setting. So, curious to see how that went. But otherwise, yes. I like this car. The way it looks. Wasn't sure if I would, but it's kind of like a throwback to every YD2 version, to be honest, because there's every single letter kind of combination throughout this car. And yeah, let me know what you think. The SD 1.0 Super Drift. New era, 2022 release. And yes, like I said it already, I think. Like, comment, subscribe, and until next time, we'll catch you later. Goodbye now.